dead no more. The castles crumble, swept out by the tide. Westwards here, we don't run, we ride. Westward we rise, yeah, we're taking the crown. Truth's on the move, lies are going down. The beach is ours, the rebels unite. Westward independent, fighting the good fight. Yo, hands in the air, let's hear the roar. They try to cancel truth, but we said no more. The castles crumble, swept out by the tide. Westward's here, we don't run, we ride. Westward we rise, yeah, we're taking the crown. Truth's on the move, lies are going down. The beach is ours, the rebels unite. Westward independent, fighting the good fight. Oh, the sun sets on the big charade. Westward's anthem, truth never fades.
Hello, hello. Welcome to live from Westward Independent. We are a project of the Citizens Oversight and Accountability Project, and we have a great panel tonight. We have myself, Adriana Richards. I'm the co-founder of Westward Independent and COPE, and my business partner is in the background. He is doing all the tech work, and his name is Joseph Enslow. We have Chris Shaw, a neuroscientist and UBC professor, Christine Massey, a researcher and FOIA investigator, Ian Patton, MLA for Delta South and critic for Agriculture, Fisheries and Agricultural Land Commission, Jack McLeod, president of Landkeeper Society, John Graff, he's chairman, president of Living Streams Institute, and Serena Winterburn, who's a matriarch and influencer, Stephen Pelech, a renowned biochemist and president of Kinexus Bioinformatics Corporation. And then we have Katie, who's the first person we'll be talking to. She's the daughter of the people that own an ostrich farm that is starting to get some news traction around British Columbia, but not enough. And we want to hear her story, and we want to see if some of the people on the panel have ideas or thoughts about how we could save her 400 ostriches from being slaughtered. So I'd like to welcome in Katie, if I may. Hello, Katie. Thank you for joining us.
We were having some technical difficulties. Sorry, the internet has not been cooperating tonight.
Oh, that's fine. We can hear you just fine now. I'd like to just begin by giving us a background of how long you've had this ostrich farm and what makes it so unique, and what is this farm?
Right. So my mom's been involved in ostrich for over 35 years, and so I've been raised around them, and so have my brother and my sister. It's kind of been a family project. Out here in Edgewood, we've been for over 25 years, and these ostrich are more like family for sure. Some of our oldest birds out there are 34 years old. And my mom always told us kids for years and years, and she still has told us, she's like, these ostriches are going to do something amazing for mankind one day. And we never knew what that was going to be. And, she's given it all. She's devoted her life and her everything to these animals. And so it's been taken very seriously by us kids and by family. And so we, with some stuff going on now, we could, I guess, just talk a little bit about 2021.
That's what I was going to go to next. Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. So these guys, we've been involved for years ago. 2021, we would do interested in meat and oil and all the healing properties of the ostrich. And then now that we're we kind of pioneers in the industry, meat, creating awareness and education. And now the main focus of the farm for the last 3 years has been solely creating a company called Studio Bioscience. And that was in creating a collaboration with in Kyoto, Japan, and United States and Canada. That was formed during COVID-19. So during COVID-19, when everything kind of came to a halt, they found a gentleman called Dr. Tsukamoto online and kind of fell in love with his passion and his research and reached out to him. And from there on, we formed a collaboration. It took a while. It took a couple of years for them to really gain his trust and for them to be able to really share and understand that they had the same passions and they had the same ideas, and they really wanted to work together. So in the last 3 years, that collaboration has been extremely important, and this farm has been involved in a joint venture, antibody venture, and that has been being supported by Dr. Tsukamoto in Kyoto, Japan, Dr. Stu Greenberg out of Boston in the USA, and this is working with Dr. Stu, who's also known as Dr. Ostrich in Kyoto, Japan. He has lots of many more decades and years of this. He's been working on this longer than this company. He currently holds 26 plus worldwide patents. And all of this research is geared and emphasized towards the antibodies in an ostrich, the robust antibodies. So he has been busy doing creating research, doing some clinical trials, developing his patents, and really focusing on some nutraceuticals and antibodies to help people go towards these viruses and handle them differently in the future. And there was a really great saying there was by a professor on one of the articles in CTV, and he said, Canada and the world's problem is, we wait until the wolf is in the barn, and then we try to figure out how to get it out. And I loved that because it was like, that's absolutely right. So this is obviously extremely devastating to us, and this is obviously extremely devastating to us.
I'm just going to slow you down. Can I just slow you down for a minute? Only because there's some people that know nothing about your story. So the lab you were working with out east, what were you helping supply them with? And what happened in that lab?
Right. So Immune Biosolutions, they were working with out east, and Frederick Leduc, the CEO of the company, Immune Biosolutions, their sole how they were funded and stuff was by chicken farmers, chicken farmers. So chicken people, their sole purpose in Immune Biosolutions was to for antibodies, chicken antibodies and chicken research, chicken antibodies, right, Dave? Yeah. And sorry, Dave just walked in, one of the business partners of the farm. So when he took interest in obviously the ostrich egg and the potential of the antibodies, and wanted to do do his own clinical trials, and the clinical trials they came out to prove that they were way more robust than a chicken egg. So at that point, the antibodies came back more robust, and shortly after that, the company got bought out. So he had a whole bunch of studies done. They got all the data. They got a whole bunch of the test results, everything. He created him a really nice slideshow. And as soon as that became known that the antibodies were way stronger than the chicken eggs, within a week, the company got bought out, and he signed an NDA, and he said to my mom and her business partner, I'm sorry, I can't talk about this anymore. And I'm sorry, but I can't take this any further, which was really interesting. I don't know who bought the company. They don't know who bought the company. And then he just went silent, radio silent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we did look into the company. It's still running, but we can't figure out who bought it. So I'm just gonna start for because we're gonna bring up some of those emails, the emails of the one doctor in Japan that you were working with, and show that they were offering help through this whole situation. But if we can just go back to exactly what happened. When did the first bird get sick? What was the symptoms? What were they kind of like? And how did that then go to the government? Like, what was just that part of the story?
For sure. So right around Christmas, they started to get a couple sick birds. The symptoms were runny nose, reddish eyes. They would get a really, really high fever. And really bright green feces. And so at the time, they actually didn't, we have viruses that come through here, and it's kind of, I guess you have livestock, sometimes you have dead stock, and it's a cycle of life, and you treat. And the symptoms that they were experiencing here weren't as of a huge alarm, because in 2022, they had similar symptoms. And at that time, they sent a test out to their vet, and the test came back from their vet. It was pseudomonas. So in 2022, so they are. They're around Christmas. Their birds are experiencing some symptoms that are looking familiar to them, and they're not overly concerned. They're thinking it's probably pseudomonas again, and so they put a call into their vet, and their vet hadn't called back because it was during the Christmas holidays. And at that time, we had an anonymous call going on us, which is, I don't know, we don't know, to CFIA, saying they were sure we had avian flu. Mm-hmm. So at that time, we got a call from CFIA and said there's been an anonymous report that you've had some dead ostrich, and somebody's pretty sure it's avian flu. So at the time, they explained the symptoms, and the symptoms to CFIA, and they explained how the birds were sick, but then a lot of them were getting better. And CFIA at that time said, okay, yeah, no, it doesn't add up with the symptoms of avian H5N1. So they just said, because it doesn't make sense that if the chicken farms and the poultry farms get it, the chickens are sick. And then there's like 30,000 chickens are dead within 24 hours, or 36 hours. A lot of the time, CFIA was saying that they can't even get out to the barns. And then so go ahead.
So because we're going to touch on this later, what is the test, the specific test that you use, that you send out?
They came, and they came. They asked us if we had any more deaths, to please let them know when we had a couple fresh, and then they wanted to come out, and they wanted to run a test on them. So we had a couple that had died, and so we phoned CFIA, which was just the worst. This was the worst move in hindsight, and we should have just never let them on. And they came out. So they died. So the birds were deceased the one day, probably in the morning. They didn't come out until the next day. They came out at 1 in the afternoon. So these deceased birds had sat there for I don't know how many hours. The CFIA, they took a swab, a PCR test. They did a culture down the throat, a swab down the throat, and they did a rectal.
Okay. Yes, because we definitely want to touch on some of the PCR tests issues later. And just this is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for people that don't know what that acronym means, and it's just kind of interesting because that's Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And are your birds used for food at all?
Nope, not at all.
Right.
We're in no commercial stores. We've never been in commercial stores. Yeah, we do. Yeah, no,
Okay.
nothing.
Okay, so then what happened? One of the and you made an appeal to the CFIA, and what was the result of that? And Joe, I think we have that to pull up. Go ahead.
Right. So we did ask. So at the time of them being here, this is very important. The time of them being here, they asked for, would it be possible for us to do rectal, more cultures? So instead of just cultures on the 2 deceased, could we do some cultures on the healthy ones? And then, so yeah, it's that, and they said no. That which was very alarming, obviously at that time, because so why are you not testing us for health? You're just testing us for disease.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so they denied your appeal, and you only are allowed one appeal, correct?
No, and this, sorry. So this here, so this is the exemption. The exemption of depopulation forms that were submitted to CFIA, and this is their final report that we would have got was got that Friday. And as you can see clearly, it's the decision is final and not subject to appeal.
Right. Okay. And that was just expand inside of there. It said because this the world, what is it? The World Health, I can't remember what you said it was, determined that ostriches.
World Organization. So go ahead. Go ahead.
No, just say that again.
World Health.
Right?
Oh yeah, World Health Animal Organization.
Right. And they determined that ostriches were technically poultry in their minds, correct?
It is. They are classified as poultry, correct? Yeah.
Okay. So I just want people to know that your farm, like explain where your farm is. It's not in the middle. First of all, the birds don't fly. You're not in the middle of in the city. No. You're way out. No. I even asked for friends that were in your area and no one was even close to you. Their farm is hundreds of kilometers away from any other commercial poultry farm. It's very isolated, dead end road. Extremely remote. If anybody, there is no risk here of the public or anybody's safety. That's for sure. Right, and we're just going to pull up. Joe, you have that letter from the doctor from Japan that you were working with, and you were saying that was this an offer that he was giving to you to help, and then it was turned down?
It's the olive branch to the Canadian government, and I think that's what's always been so important. It's him saying, "Here, I have this, and I'm offering to help." And which has been, it's been wonderful. And I think what the alarming thing to most of the public and everybody that's been involved in listening to the whole stories is that, why are they not fighting science with science? It's sitting here. It's not at the beginning stages. They have science sitting here ready to be used. So
what is he specifically offering?
So he's offering that he has antibodies that are ready to be used, and he's offering the antibodies to come, and he wants to help vaccinate the ostriches that are here. And what, Dave? What else is it? What is he offering? Sorry, or Dave is.
He's offering the antibodies to be used in animals.
Yes.
Or possibly even for humans.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
our ostriches already are.
They're naturally immunized. What he offered, and in the one email it says he's offering a vaccination. Sorry, we're just everybody's everywhere, and we're kind of
Yeah.
get tired at the end of the day. And so in one of the emails, he has absolutely, so he's offering a vaccination, but he's offering the antibodies to be used amongst animals and even, and even humans if the government wanted. But so his olive branch is his stockpile of antibodies that are ready, that, you know, for the government to use in a positive way, and hopefully create change.
Mm-hmm. And so they have decided that you have to slaughter 400 birds. What do these birds weigh approximately?
Probably about 250 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest 300. Like,
wow.
Wow.
Yeah. So has CFIA offered any compensation to kill the birds?
Yes, there's compensation. No, has it been thoroughly discussed and laid out? And no, it hasn't.
Okay.
And you know, and at this, it's and how do you? I mean, we haven't even we've where our next step is too is we want to start building a list, start putting a list of expenses together. What would that look like for cost for us? And what would that look like for, you know, so you're euthanizing an ostrich, that just, you know, to destroy them, then it's disposal. And then it's how much money are into them? How much is each animal really worth? Because they're not just like a cow. These are ostrich that are in a joint venture antibody program that, you know, they have a different value for sure.
And the interesting thing I read in one of the letters from them was that you're supposed to dispose of them humanely, but
yes.
As you've mentioned before, you can't just shoot a gun because, of course, they'll, you know, and go slit their throats or anything. And that there's an article, actually, I'm just reading it here, that it was in the Vancouver Sun, and it said
They did a really good job. The Vancouver Sun.
Yeah, they did great. And one little part said that cruelty to animals is against the Criminal Code of Canada and the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act in British Columbia. Section 441 of the Criminal Code states an animal owner cannot willfully permit to be caused unnecessary pain, suffering, or injury to an animal or a bird. So not only are they asking you to take this on yourself to animals that you love, they're not giving you, they're just expecting you to figure out a way to do this humanely. They're massive birds. They can't be just stuck in
and you can imagine these are people that have went out there every day of their lives, and they have they've raised them, they've loved them, they've poured their heart and souls into them, and they're supposed to go out there and look at them in their big, big, beautiful eyes, and they're supposed to look at them healthy. That's mentioned, like, you know, them healthy and say and have to destroy them. Yeah.
Pardon me, I'm just going to back this up for just a moment here, Katie. I have a question in regards to, you talked about Dr. Sokomoto's offer, olive branch, that was extended to the government. I'm sorry, I missed. Did you say if there was any kind of official response back to his offer of antibodies or to vaccinate from the government?
No, there hasn't been anything yet. And I don't know, you know, we'd have to follow through with where he's reached out and whatnot. But this information has been very public, that he's put this out, this offer out. And no, there's been no response here, no calls here. There's been no emails, and there's been CFIA has those emails. They know. So yeah, CFIA directly, our caseworker, and that they have those emails. And there's been no response. No.
Thank you.
What does this order mean to your family emotionally and financially?
It's over. I mean, if there was an iron fist that came in tomorrow and there was just no stopping them, there's no replacing this. This is my mom and her business partners and all of our family's lives. It's those animals out there can't be replaced. They're not 100-day turnaround chicken. They're part of the family, and you'll never get those personalities back. You'll never get those antibodies and those birds back out there. You'll never get their strength that they have built over the some of them 34 years old. You'll never get that. It would take another lifetime for them to try to recreate that. You'll never be able to do that again. So I don't know how in that letter, they state about genetics and stuff, and they say that we don't qualify, that we are, I wish I could pull it up there, it's on that letter, that they don't qualify for, that they're special, or that they offer anything more. You can just look at them. I mean, this is just the other day. How sick are they, right? I mean, it's absurd that you would have to go to each one and you would have to put each one down individually and dispose of those beautiful souls. Yeah, it would be devastating. It'd be starting over for my mom's business partners in the 70s. My mom's she's 60 here. It's starting over. It's everything that they've poured their whole lives into, and us as supporters and family. Yeah, it'd be watching. It'd be awful. It would be awful.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. And the purpose of this is to get it out to everyone that we can, from animal rights to scientists. And that's
how we've gotten this far. It's the only hope we have. It's been because of platforms like this and the news and the media. And there's just, by chance, we've gotten the right people. The right people have called, and the right people with the right mind and the right heart, and know that this is wrong, and know that there's this, how can you turn down science when we possibly have a epidemic going into the pandemic? How do you turn down an opportunity to change, to fix it? Doesn't sound like they have a lot of opportunities, so I don't know why they wouldn't take this opportunity.
Absolutely. That's one of the questions about this whole thing that is it just leads to a little bit more of the questions around what's really going on when you've shown that this actually could be a real gift to the scientific community. So I'm going to turn actually to our guests now, and I'm going to start with Stephen. And besides maybe explaining why ostrich antibodies are so valuable in fighting diseases like avian flu or COVID or anything, what other comments do you have that you want to bring to this discussion?
Yes, thank you for having me, Adrian. Yes, I mean, apart from the heartfelt, you can't help but be concerned for the family that's invested so much into these animals and the animals themselves, because these are animals that can live to up to 75 years or more. And a lot of these animals are already over 2 decades old in this establishment. So this is quite different from a poultry farm, for example. And these animals are not being used for human consumption, but they're being used for research. My background is that I'm a professor at the University of British Columbia in the Department of Medicine, and I've been doing immunology research now for well over 40 years. And I actually study this. I actually produce antibodies in my own lab, except I make them against rabbits, and it's to study cancer proteins. So I can certainly appreciate the value of the kind of antibodies that can be produced in these animals for all kinds of research. I know in particular this is being used for COVID research at present. But talking a little bit with the family, from what I understand, there's about 200 birds that are actually prior to coming to the farm 2021, and there's another 200 that were more recent. And when they were first infected, these animals were sick. It was primarily at this time the younger birds that were actually getting very sick and some of them dying. But the older birds, the ones that have been around for in the farm, and I can be corrected if I'm misstating this, but if I understand it, before 2021, those birds, none of them have actually died. Some of them
Correct.
were mildly sick, but
No, correct. You're right.
they were not affected.
So they're
So that
sorry,
indicates
Steve.
so that indicates that these animals actually have been previously exposed to influenza-like viruses. Probably the particular virus that we're talking about now, H5N1, which is the one that we're concerned about, that it's not very transmissible to humans, but it has occurred in some cases in farms where you have a lot of the birds that got sick and many of them died. There is some transmission there, but human to human transmission is very rare with this particular H5N1 strain. Now, as it turns out, it's likely that these birds, the older birds, have natural immunity, and the younger birds, they were not exposed to the virus before, and so it's taken more of a toll on those. And if I understand, I think something around 69 birds have died, but all from this 200 or so younger birds. So those that recover will have natural immunity, and natural immunity is far better and stronger than any immunity that you can get from these kind of vaccines that are being offered at this time. Typically, when someone gets, let's say for influenza shots, seasonally, you're still looking that it's only about 20 to at best 50% effective. Whereas we know from history where we've had pandemic outbreaks with respect to influenza, that actually people that have recovered from influenza for decades are protected against that strain of influenza again. So it would appear to me, as an immunologist, that these animals, to a large extent, already have natural immunity. And in fact, having that natural immunity in the community, when these wild birds are coming back and forth and settling on the same lands and potentially could pick up the virus, they in fact are less likely to do so. So in fact, having this natural immunity already established is going to allow better protection, actually, of the spread of this virus to other, let's say, poultry farms, for example. And in fact, in the poultry farms, we've been sacrificing all these animals rather than letting them develop their natural immunity, so that you have basically herds that are resistant. So we're kind of taking the wrong strategy by killing off these animals and then replacing them with what we call immunologically naive animals, which are more likely to get infected and more likely to die. So that's one problem. The other thing that I see here is this is a remarkable colony of these birds that are very well genetically characterized. They're being studied immunologically. And so that's one of the reasons why I've extended out to the family that I can develop a test to determine whether or not the bird actually has natural immunity to H5N1. I've looked at the structures of the proteins. There's two particular proteins in particular, the neuraminidase protein, that's the N in H5N1, and the hemagglutinin protein, that's the H in N5N1. There's many different varieties of H and N proteins, and this particular combination with this virus, it tends to be a little bit more deadly in the bird species. Again, it's not very deadly in humans. To my knowledge, no one's actually died from H5N1. The viruses that have been the most devastating to humanity has been for example, the H1N1 virus that's caused the pandemic, that had about a 2.5% lethality rate in the human population in that 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, for example. So basically, we can develop a test. I'm very keen to get access to the egg yolks from these birds that will be containing the antibodies. and we'll be able to see whether or not they actually have natural immunity, and to see how long that persists in the population. So there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to advance biomedical research by maintaining this colony. So that's sort of where I'm coming in on this.
Thanks, Stephen. I'm going to follow that up actually with Chris Shaw here, because I wanted to just ask you, first of all, what you thought about, mass culling at all, but also the testing. If they're using the PCR tests, we know that they can ramp that up to any cycle they want to find anything that they want. We know the inventor said it's never to be used in that manner.
Correct.
So I'm wondering, if people would ever think about testing for alternatives like parasites, fungi, bacteria in the water or something in that area. What do you make of the testing process for this?
I'll just add before Chris pipes in, the PCR test, which we used extensively, for example, in the SARS-CoV-2, COVID-19 pandemic, at the cycles that we were testing, which was over 35 cycles or higher, this is where we're amplifying the amount of genetic material in the sample so we can actually detect it. We know that at that 35 cycles, you're looking at about 95% or higher false positives. And one of the problems that we've also faced, now that we have this extensive testing going on in facilities, cross-contamination of samples is also a big problem. And just because you can detect the presence of the virus, genetic material, this is an RNA virus, just because you can detect it, it doesn't mean that it's actually active virus. What it can easily be is remnants of the virus that when you have an outbreak, it contaminates the environment, and other people or animals in this case can breathe it in, and they may test positive, but it doesn't mean that they actually have an active viral infection and that they're contagious. So this is where ideally what you want to do is get your swab samples and culture cells and see if they're infected by those samples containing active virus. And to my knowledge, that has not been done. But that's really the only way you can absolutely tell. Or you do what's called low cycle thresholds. Typically in the case of, we know SARS-CoV-2, if it takes more than 25 cycles to amplify that DNA to detect it, it means that there's non-viable virus in that sample. And all you're amplifying is actually fragments of the genetic material, which cannot give you an active virus. So maybe Chris can add to that.
Chris, do you want to add anything to that? I think you're muted, Chris. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't realize he's still muted.
There we go.
I got it now. Okay. No, Steve covered, I think, a lot of the crucial points. I think he's absolutely right. The fact that 69 of the birds of the newer flock and none of the older ones died, I think suggests, as Steve said, that you have natural immunity occurring in the older flock, and they've probably been exposed to something very similar, if not the same virus before. The newer ones may have also been exposed to some extent. I'm curious about the timeline. So, when did this start? Because based on that, I think you can make some pretty good predictions about where they are in a kind of a natural immunity status. And I'm really curious why the Canadian Food Inspection Agency hasn't tested more animals. I suspect it's because they're going to find that if they were to do the PCR at the correct cycle, which almost never happens. I don't know about this agency, but again, think back to Bonnie Henry and her methods. And also, by the way, Bonnie Henry, I don't know if the Food Inspection Agency believes in a natural immunity or not, but Bonnie doesn't, as we know. But the simple fact is that you may have a flock that is already basically immune. The ones that died. The ones that haven't died are probably immune based on how long it's been. And Steve is right. If you test above something like certainly above 30 cycles, you're just getting crap. You're not getting anything that's infectious at all. And that the literature on that is quite extensive. And and adding to that, again, looking at the website of the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, they say they also do antibody tests. Well, those were pretty wildly inaccurate as well. I mean, Abbott Labs, for example, where the tests used at UBC for people who wouldn't take the shot, and they were not particularly effective either. So they may be looking at garbage altogether and basing their decisions based on something that really has no scientific basis at this point. So again, as Steve said, yes, they may have been exposed to the disease, but again, they are not making anything. They're not making the virus that's transmittable anymore, and that's probably the case here. And so again, given all those things that Steve touched on, and kind of these other aspects that the tests, and again, I would be really curious to see if anyone has followed up on the test. When I went to the website today, I couldn't find any information about how they actually do the testing. So it may be there somewhere. So based on that, based on the the impact on the family, the fact that it's almost really unlikely to be spread to other flocks, especially because you would need an awful lot of the virus to be present in the current flock, which is really unlikely in the ostrich flock. And then it would only be wild birds, maybe ducks, that would transmit it. And again, that's pretty unlikely given the circumstances. So I think basically it's kind of a made up crisis. Maybe the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is doing their best, but again, I would be really questioning their methods, because I think their methods may be their Achilles heel. They may not be doing the correct tests in the proper way to actually detect whether or not the rest of the flock is infectious. And if it's not infectious, there's absolutely no reason to cull.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And that's what we're going to move on to, is the advocacy that people are doing and can do behind the scenes with some of the rest of the panelists here. Because to me, the proof is it has to be in the accuser. They have to come forward with the proof. It's not really up to the accused to have to defend themselves and come up with all the science, et cetera, et cetera. I actually just received an email, and I'll just read that short little paragraph from it to move on to the other guests and the advocacy here too, before we go back to questions. Someone just said that, make the province prove that your flocks are bona fide threat. During 2004 to 2006, select flocks of genetic significance were granted exemptions from culling. They were successfully quarantined instead. One case involved the Nene geese of Hawaii. One does not preserve the rights via begging and responding as a victim. One must be prepared to be proactive in seizing control over their rights. Getting the injunction against the CFIA is a fundamental step in this process. Defending food sovereignty is profoundly strong. And furthermore, Canada is a signatory to the FAO of the UN Treaty on Protecting Biological Diversity. Protecting farm animals' genetic diversity is a key component to that treaty. So I know, just to bring Katie back in here, you did reach out to your MP. We do have a response from their office here, and they wanted you to respond with, they wanted some questions basically that they could ask in Parliament. But so I'm just going to go over to the kind of other part of this, and I'm going to start with Serena Winterburn. Just if you want to touch on ethics or the culling, or what comes to your mind that you would like to touch on in this.
I guess what's coming to mind for me is Bill C-293, which was sitting at the second reading in Senate. And while it was a private member's bill, that means that through the prorogation, while it was not actually dissolved, and if it is reintroduced, Bill C-293 will resume from where it left off. And in Bill C-293, we see in there that they are looking at moving away from live animal markets, as well as the reduction of any kind of live markets, and any kind of economic investment in traditional proteins. So for me, this keeps bringing up Bill C-293. This brings up what we've seen our fishermen fighting against, using faulty data to shut down fishing grounds, when we see what's going on across Canada in regards to our animal markets, our sustainability, and the over-regulating using faulty data. So I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the huge contribution to the scientific world from the perspective of antibodies, and looking at, if we are looking at the H5N1, this kind of a setback into cull it back with Dr. Tsukamoto offering the antibodies and the vaccination assistance if needed for both animals and humans. I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at this Accountability Act of C-293, which is what they've dubbed it. And this is meant to be a protection of ecosystems, plants, animals, and humans, and the overregulation of absolutely all of those systems. So this is counterintuitive to what they're saying that they're going to be regulating, how they're going to be protecting it. So as a matriarch, as a woman who is First Nations, this seems completely counterintuitive to what they're saying they're trying to protect. And I'm wondering how this is going to set back the scientific community for all the research when you're talking about this, the scientific relevance of the antibodies being much more robust than we are seeing in the chickens' eggs. So I'm concerned about the legislation coming in. I'm concerned about how this is changing the face of Canada, and how the evidence, the scientific evidence, and the shutting down of this actually seems to play more in the hands of shutting down our food industry, our food security, our food sovereignty, and further eroding our connection to land, ecosystems, and animals.
Mm-hmm. Very, very good points. I completely agree. And I think that everyone on this panel is understanding that it's a lot more. It's a lot more. It's an attack on food. It's attack. Everything has to be registered and chipped. And so I think that's why I wanted to bring in John right now, because he's been in this world for a really long time. And we had spoken about the fact that there wasn't really compensation even offered. And the fact that the government couldn't offer compensation to all the farms that they want to slaughter the animals on. So I'd like John to just come in and just, quickly let us know kind of what we were talking about, some of the advocacy and not looking at these people as your friends.
First, they came for the sheep farmers and the cattle farmers 20 years ago, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a sheep farmer or a cattle farmer. Then they came for the chicken farmers here lately, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a chicken farmer. Now they're coming for ostrich farms, and because I'm not an ostrich farmer, I didn't speak out. But then they came for me and you and everybody that's watching, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And I think one of the errors we make in addressing this is we want to address this with logic and reason. And we're dealing with illogical and unreasonable people. And when we understand that, then we start to understand how to deal with them. I've been around this world and this business back in the days of Mad Cow. I was involved in the industry. I've been a clinical consultant for chains of veterinary clinics across North America. I was consultant for some of the large drug companies on vaccine efficacy, nutritionist for most of the the industry at some level or across the country. Had an interesting career in food and agriculture. And one of the things I keep seeing is that at no time and no place is an interest in sustaining actual food production and food security part of the entire plan of our regulators or our government. and they have infiltrated all of our advocacy groups. So if you're looking at premises IDs and stuff, it is our advocacy groups that are tied in with these. So the cattlemen's associations and that kind of thing, they are ancestrally tied into the regulation system and can't really speak for the producer any longer. So there's a lot of these things we've got to understand, and until we recognize that this is an attack on food, it's an attack on humanity, like Serena was saying. And the bill, I like that she pointed out Bill C-293. This is, you realize in Bill C-293, one of the points is the phasing out of livestock activities. It's something that they are taking away a lifestyle, which is part of the plan. And all of these things that people call conspiracies, they truly are conspiracies. It is a conspiracy against agriculture, against food production, and against our population, but they're not theories. And once we understand that, and we understand that each of the people, and whoever is watching this and listening, your food is coming from, and other products, ostriches have a lot of other properties here, and it, of course, it is not a very large segment of the agricultural industry. There isn't a lot of ostrich farmers, but what better people to go pick on to establish precedents? You get the ones that are the outliers, and you get the ones where no one feels any tie to, and then they can establish precedents and then come after everyone else.
Yeah,
it's by the book. This is a plan, and maybe the inspector that's there isn't part of the plan. They're just doing their job, or that person, they're responding. But they need to start using reason and logic that is missing from this. And I listen to the good doctors and stuff here, and they are very reasonable and very logical and very scientific. And that's not what you're dealing with here. And so once we understand that, we can start dealing with it on the basis that it is. Our MPs, our MLAs and stuff can maybe almost be shamed into taking a stand for what is right. Sorry to use it in that way, but that's where we're at. And we need help.
Hey, Adrian, it's Ian.
Yep.
Listen, I have to run. I'm sorry. But
oh, no, I didn't even see you still on there. I would have pulled you up there just to see.
No problem. I just want to quickly say, I'm a former dairy farmer. I'm still living on the farm I was born and raised on in Delta. Dairy farmer for many years. The thing that scares me, and a lot of people don't like mink, but they wiped out our entire mink population of mink farmers in BC because a few of them had COVID. I'm scared to death that if some dairy cattle, which are contracting this in California, if they get a few in British Columbia, who knows what the heck they're going to do? Are they going to start telling dairy farmers to wipe out their entire herds? So I can tell you that right now I've already been in touch with the Minister of Agriculture in BC, the Deputy Minister of Agriculture in BC, and I will continue this for the next few days and go to the federal level to see what I can do to get CFIA to back off on this.
Oh, thank you, Ian. We know you're such a farmer that's actually in government, able to advocate for your own family business, which is wonderful too. And we really, really appreciate all that you've always done for the farming industry. Thank you so much for joining us.
Could I say thank you too? Because I think it's going to be together that together is what's going to stop this. And I keep saying that the world is watching the ostrich farm right now, and we need to make a precedence. And if we allow these 400 to die and they're healthy sitting out there, you're right. They're already saying it's being found in dairy, it's being found in cattle, it's being found in pigs. Well, then if they're allowed to kill these healthy animals, then I just thank you very much, Ian.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And I'm going to do whatever I can in the next week or so to to get this out publicly and see if we can get a stop order on your healthy birds.
Ian, thank you. From all of us here, from all of our family. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Ian. And I think that's kind of a good kind of segue in a way to say, you know, that what we're actually up against is proving, you know, they're going to do this to everyone. Like, they're going to come for the cows and the chickens and the eggs and everything else like that. We've already talked about the PCR test, which it's totally faulty, ramped up at all these cycles. And we don't ever look at bacteria and parasites and things like that. And then we just take their word for it. And then we cow down to their word. So to me, I feel like it's not a debate, and we're not starting a debate around viruses. So everyone's clear on that. However, because of PCR tests and things like that, the proof needs to lie in the accuser's hands to prove that your animal has a certain thing. And so I'd really like to bring on Christine Massey, who has she's the FOIA. I've never seen anyone that's done more FOIAs ever. And I can also, I will share in the links below in the YouTube, I will share her Substack where you can link to all the FOIA requests that she's done regarding the H5N1 and them admitting that they actually don't really have it. So I just without a debate, what I'd like to do is just bring on Christine so that we can just have a little thing of what she feels would help to fight this.
Hi, thank you very much, Adrian. And thank you for having me to talk for a few minutes. Yeah, I'm coming at this from a very different angle. And like you said, we're not here to get into a debate. Before I know you're going to leave a link, but I'll also give a link to a specific page I would like people to go to if their minds are open at all. So it's tinyurl.com and then /avian-hoax. So what I've been doing since May of 2020, when the COVID operation began, I started out believing that there was a virus. I never had any fear because I had almost a decade experience of dealing with the public health establishment on water fluoridation. And so I knew that they lie through their teeth when they have double standards and their decisions are not based on scientific evidence. And so I never had any fear. I didn't buy into the agenda, but I did believe there was a virus initially, and I just assumed it wasn't something I thought to question. So basically what happened was I came across some information and I learned that people were actually questioning the very foundation of virology, the methods that are employed by virologists, pointing out that they don't adhere to the scientific method, that they don't adhere to basic logic, they make wild leaps of illogic, virology is dependent absolutely on logical fallacies. Also, the history of virology is very much a history of animal cruelty and animal horrific experiments. And even if you think, well, maybe it's you can justify it because of the scientific information that comes from it, there actually isn't any scientific information coming from these experiments because they don't adhere to basic logic and the scientific method. So it's a very big issue that's affecting people. We all just lived through the COVID hoax. And what I started learning was because there are problems with the methodologies, I didn't just watch some videos and start believing something. I did fact checking, I read studies, and this is what I would urge everyone to start looking into for themselves, because this is something that is being used. It's a major tool that's being used against humanity and against the animal kingdom. Start learning a little bit about virology, and on the webpage that I just gave you the URL for, there's lots of educational materials, but there's also lots of evidence. So what I've been collecting for the last close to 5 years now, I started doing freedom of information requests to the very institutions that were insisting that there's the COVID-19 virus, SARS-CoV-2. They're the people that were telling us to do this and don't do that and get tested and, get your injections. I started filing Freedom of Information and challenging them to show that they could actually demonstrate logically and scientifically that there actually was a virus, that this particle actually exists as described, and that does the things that they say that it does. So just to give you a really quick summary, fast forwarding to where we are today, we now have on my website, and it's all publicly available, we have official confessions and failures from 225 different health and science institutions in 40 different countries. No one has a record of anyone on Earth finding this alleged virus in anyone, ever, anywhere, and purifying it. And the reason I asked about the purification is because if you think there's a particle that might be causing an illness in people, you have to be able to find it. And it's not enough to just take some lung fluid or some snot and declare that there's a virus in there somewhere. You have to actually separate the particle that you think might be a virus from everything else. And then you can do valid sequencing and characterization and valid, rigorous, controlled experiments. You cannot do those things if you haven't got the particle that you think might be a virus and it's purified. So we have 225 institutions on record admitting they don't have any record of anyone on Earth doing this. And over the last 2 years, I started branching out and looking into other alleged viruses as well, along with many other colleagues. And I've done freedom of information to the CDC on dozens of alleged viruses. And I've also looked into avian influenza. And I'm just going to read you like a little list of some of the information you're going to find, official confessions, on that webpage that I gave you. The CDC is on record twice. They have no record of anyone finding this avian influenza in anybody, in any alleged host, animal or person, and purifying it. The FDA, more recently, I started doing my requests a little bit differently. So I tried to make it more clear for the public because so many people get stuck. They can't wrap their head around the significance of finding the particle and purifying it. So I started doing things differently so that it's hopefully more clear to more people. So I started doing a 4-part request. So I started out saying, do you have, or asking for records, any records that contain scientific evidence showing that the purported particles actually exist with the claimed genome and proteins, and that they actually behave as a virus. And I reminded them that scientific evidence it involves the testing of falsifiable hypotheses with valid, rigorous, controlled experiments. It's not observational studies, it's not declarations, it's not pseudoscience. It has to be valid, rigorous, controlled experiments. And then I also asked, if you don't have that, do you at least have that initial step of finding the alleged particle and purifying it? If, that's the first step, then you could move on to the other steps. If you haven't done it all, do you at least have that first step? Do you have the particles for someone to even study? I also asked, do you have any record of anyone finding the alleged genome of this alleged virus intact in anyone? And the reason I asked that is because what a lot of people have come to realize in the last few years that this isn't done in virology. That's not how it works. When a virologist says that they've sequenced something, what they've actually done is create a computer model. And when you learn more about the details, you see just how utterly ridiculous it is. They find millions of sequences in a complex brew that was never shown to even contain a virus, and they make a computer model. And then the other question was, do you have any records that scientifically demonstrate contagion of the illness or symptoms that is allegedly caused by the virus in question? So I have the FDA on record. I challenged them recently. They were not able to provide anything. And the lawyer for the FDA has admitted twice now that that's just not something that the FDA would even have. This is the institution that, like Health Canada, is approving products, they're approving tests and the injections. So they're the ones rubber stamping and saying, yes, this is accurate for detecting the alleged virus, or yes, this is effective for protecting people from the alleged virus. You cannot do that in a legitimate manner. You can't even evaluate something if you don't have scientific evidence that this thing actually even exists in the first place. So I have them on record. I have the U.S. Department of Agriculture also on record for avian influenza virus. I have the Canadian Food Inspection Agency on record, same thing with H5N1. But also I have a confession from them from about a year and a half ago. I asked them, I challenged them to provide any scientific evidence for any virus that they claim has ever infected any livestock in Canada, ever. And they admitted flat out they don't have any. This was their confession. Public Health Agency of Canada, they have nothing on avian influenza virus. They also admitted in another request, I asked them, do you have any record of any alleged virus being found in any people anywhere ever by anybody on the planet, and purifying it so that you can actually study this thing and sequence it properly and characterize it? They admitted they didn't have any. We have Japan's National Institute of Infectious Diseases on record. We have the UK Animal and Health Agency. We have the European CDC. We have all these confessions, and as was being said, the burden of proof is on the people making the claim. So I would just urge people, anyone who's a farmer, anyone who's being approached by the Canadian Food Inspection Agency or anybody else going forward about any alleged virus, even if you believe in viruses, you don't want to do these people any favors. This is literally a matter of life and death for these ostriches. So even if you believe, and even if your business model is based on ideas about germs, I would strongly suggest that people just put that aside for now and focus, like Adrian said, put all of the burden of proof on whoever you're dealing with, and you demand that they provide valid, rigorous scientific evidence for every single one of their claims. So they should be able to show that the particle exists, show that it does the things that they claim that viruses do, show the contagion, show that they have validated tests. I guarantee you they will not be able to do it. So there's no reason to help these people. You don't need to concede anything. And even if you've admitted in the past publicly, you believe that there's viruses, and yes, we tested positive, we're always learning as we go. And I'm giving you new information for you to look into. On the website that I gave you the link for, it also has the link to my affidavit. So I have a notarized affidavit where I go into great detail about the Freedom of Information responses, but also the basic logic around virology and how virology is not based on logic. It's not scientific. So I would really urge people to just try to open your minds a bit and at least look into it, look at the studies for yourself, learn about it. There's lots of educational material on the webpage that I've referenced. And I would also, just based on my own personal experience, I would really recommend people that, like, as much as you possibly can, keep all your communications in writing, document everything, save everything. If anyone insists on coming on your property, film them, document everything that's going on, and just keep the pressure on them. If it was me personally, I would be telling them, no matter what I'd said in the past, based on what I know now, my concerns that I have now, you have to prove every single thing that you are claiming. And you have to also demonstrate your authority. So you have to demonstrate that I have a lawful obligation to do the things that you are saying. The way I look at it, I'm not a party to Acts, Code, statutes, regulations. It's completely irrelevant unless I have a contract with Canadian Food Inspection or somebody else where I've agreed that if there's a so-called positive test on a fraudulent test, I'm going to kill my animals, then I don't have any obligation to do that. And if you even contact me one more time on this topic and you don't provide all that evidence and proof of your authority, I will consider that a trespass by way of intimidation and fraud and harassment and constructive fraud. And if you do anything to my animals at all, I'll be having you charged with animal cruelty. And God forbid any death occurs in any people as a result of this, because we know what happened during the lockdowns. You know, sometimes people are under so much stress that, God forbid, they have a heart attack and pass away, or sometimes people commit suicide. So if any loss of human life occurs, you'll be charged with under Section 229 of the Criminal Code, Section 229C, culpable homicide is murder. If anybody does something for an unlawful purpose and interfering with anyone's freedom, liberty, their property, life, the life of their animals, for an unlawful purpose and interfering without due process, which is not happening here. Due process, you have a chance to look at the evidence, you have a chance to give your evidence, you have a chance to cross-examine. There's all kinds of steps involved, and that's not what they do to people here. They just come at you and they tell you, oh, we have an order. They can be charged with culpable homicide, in other words, murder under Section 229C. So I would just recommend people be really, really firm, stick to the facts, logic, and evidence, put all of the burden on them if you want to save the life of your animals, and please look into virology, please look into germ theory more generally. We've looked into supposedly pathogenic bacteria as well, and they don't have valid scientific studies to show that bacteria are pathogenic either. So that's basically what I wanted to say. I'll just throw out there quickly too that PCR, it cannot, even the CDC has admitted, it cannot confirm the presence of a virus, but any test, you cannot validate a test for something that hasn't been shown to exist. So we have to not put the cart before the horse. You start with the proof that the virus even exists, which they can't do. If they could, then you could move on to tests, but they can't even do that initial step. So I wish everybody all the best with this. And if anybody wants to reach out to me, they can find my email address easily in my FOI communications. And I really hoping for the best for everybody. Thank you.
Adrian, you're muted.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Christine. I know it's late there. Thanks, Stephen. And we've just gone like a little bit over time. And so we were just going to kind of wrap it up with if anyone wanted the last word, but also, Serena, did anyone end up, were there specific questions on your social media, like a couple that you thought were great? Otherwise, we have some, and we'll just do just a couple because we kind of gone over time to
So
any of the panelists.
Absolutely. So one of the main questions that kept coming back, and I saw it show up as well in the comment section here on YouTube, is whether or not an injunction was filed. Is anybody able to speak to that? And there were those who were questioning whether or not there is a legal team that has been compiled and is working with the family or for the family.
Well, only what you can say.
Yes, only what you can say in regards to that.
Yeah, no, nothing's been filed. And we had somebody reach out to us, and it was directly on the Friday. Once we had gotten the news, we put a global segment. The global news went on. Right after that, we got approached by a lawyer, and she said that she fights CFIA. And ever since then, she also told my mom, she said, don't worry, like I can't do this pro bono, but I'm going to work on a really low budget. And then ever since that day, she's absolutely done nothing yet for us, but push us to get her, to get a media statement out, let her put a media statement out, and money. She wanted a $10,000 retainer. She said just to get an injunction and try to fight for a state order was going to cost us for almost $40,000. And so it's just been, and pressure, just attacking us and almost like scare tactics. And we have just kind of backed off now. And we're just really hoping that we can go another avenue with an amazing group that we're hoping will give us some support, and maybe we can go about this a different way. So the one lawyer that reached out to us is starting, a professor that we have gotten to know has said, she doesn't even just trust lawyers. This is all new to us. So much is on our mind, so much is on our shoulders. And you want to trust lawyers. You want to trust someone who reaches out to you. But it's almost like she's trying to burn up any money that we get so we can't fight. It's like she's almost trying to use it all and make us make the wrong step. It's almost like she's working against us. So I
It's
don't know.
almost
I
as though
thought-
they're beholden to the bar rather than.
Yeah, yeah. It doesn't seem, it's not feeling right. It's feeling very, very aggressive, very aggressive. And it's almost like against us. So I would rather have two doors. We're trying one more option before we go legal. Or we were going to go legal. And I think, any lawyer should see it better. You have two options rather than just go and possibly get it denied in front of a federal judge. However, somebody did reach out to us and they really talked to us a lot about like what Christine just mentioned. And it's really ironic that we just heard that today. And they explained to us how it's like volleyball, and they volleyed to you now, and it's left with you. It's February 1st. Now you need to volley to them. Before they volley back to you, you volley to them and say, these are our commands. These are our demands. So we want you to comply with, proof of how did you come up with this study, proof of the virus, proof of it being present, proof that it's even, in the other birds that you want to be killed. And I think that could buy some time, because he said, once you volley it back to them, it's like contractual law. And he's like, you're putting out there. Now the February 1st date doesn't exist. He's like, once you've put it back to them, saying, no, these are our demands. I don't know if that sounds right. I'm not really good with law, but.
And so, Katie, I do have a question then in regards to what you're speaking about now, because you said that the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, that you have never had commercial, you've never utilized commercial and had your birds meat utilized commercially. So are you in contract with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency in any capacity? So you're not contracted to them to be, am I correct that you are not contracted then to be supplying any kind of testing to allow them on your property because you're not contracted with the Canadian Food Inspection Agency?
So what they do say is that it's over their heads because they're controlled now by the World Health Organization.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that brings us back to C-293 and international bodies having sweeping authority within Canada, which is a national security issue.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Yeah, so I mean, I echo Serena's comments about Bill C-293. It's very problematic. But at the same time, I don't want to leave your audience with the impression that this is controversial, the existence of viruses. I mean, I've been working on this for 40 years. This is not the time and the place to go into the details about why Christina is so wrong about what she said. And I think if you're going to use those arguments to try to defend, your farm, it's not going to work. The evidence for the existence of viruses is so overwhelming. Even on your own body, you have about 350 trillion viruses.
I challenge you to prove that. I've seen your emails. I've seen your arguments before. I challenge you to prove it. Sorry to interrupt.
And I'm happy to spend a whole afternoon showing you all the data that you've been asking for. I have it. And we cannot do the work that we do without this being true. So you just have gone to the wrong people to ask these questions. I'm happy to give you my time of day and explain it to you.
For the record, I did send a Freedom of Information request to your university, and I specifically asked for records held by you for SARS-CoV-2, and you didn't have any.
I was never contacted about any records about SARS-CoV-2.
It's on my website.
The virus debate is not just a Christine thing. There's many doctors out there. So that's why I said there's no point, except for even if there is a virus, we have to also argue the point of how they're testing for it. And like I said, they're not also going there and testing for bacteria in the water or parasites or other possibilities of why birds got sick. And so I think challenging it in multiple ways is just I mean, I think what we're doing is grasping at every possibility of fighting this, and that's why I said I mean, I don't want to go into the virus thing, because that is literally a 12-hour podcast.
Right.
If we
And
wanted to do that
Respectfully,
one
I'd
day.
like to echo what Adriana is saying here respectfully, is understanding that if they are coming forward with an argument as to why they can put in a cull order, it is important to use the science and the narrative and the verbiage that they are utilizing in order to prove that the data is faulty. So when we have respectable individuals, whether it be a virologist or anyone else who does investigation, it is important to know where their tools are best utilized and how, because we are all doing this together towards the same cause.
Right.
Respectfully.
Adriana, I want to add one thing, if I may, which is I think if you go in trying to challenge viruses, the existence of viruses, and again, you and Steve, I'd love to see you guys have that conversation. But if you want to go in and challenge it, you're going to hit what's called judicial notice. And judicial notice will basically say this, basically it's established because they say there are viruses, therefore, water is wet, the sky is blue. That's what's going to happen. That's precisely what's going to happen. Your case will be dead right away, rather than going to trying to challenge the underlying science that has, whatever contention there is, the underlying science that has been in place for a long time. So that's a bigger ask, and I don't think you'll succeed.
Yeah. Well, I think that because we've kind of we could go on for a long time, because everyone on here is so amazing. But I'd just like to point out the GoFundMe, because most likely, there's probably going to have to get lawyers involved. And so if you can, pop over to the GoFundMe if you want to donate anything there. And I just wanted to give anyone, if they have any last words before we wrap this up, so that we can not make this really long, because we want this to go everywhere, and we don't want people to say, "Oh God, it's a 3-hour podcast. I'm never going to watch it." So, is there anything that anyone wants to share?
Could I just say something to Katie? I feel for you in this time, for you and all your family, and your investors and backers and stuff. This is not just a business when we're into the farming world. This isn't some clothing store. This is animals that we live and we care for, and we bring ostriches. We don't bring them into the world, but we care for them out of the eggs and stuff.
Oh, they brought them into the world.
But I think that you have to understand the aspect of that, and there's lots of people out there that are supportive of you and supportive of this type of this. And remember, with an ostrich, this is different than a chicken. An ostrich is a large animal that has a large dollar value associated with it, and the protocol for treating a large animal and dealing with that is different than dealing with a barn of 40,000 birds that have a $1.50 value to each one. There is a lot of things that can be done to help you, and I think all of us are behind you guys in helping that.
Thanks, John.
I appreciate that very much. I appreciate all of you taking the time. I know that life is busy, so all of you taking the time tonight and the last few days. And I want to give, Colin, thank you for Colin for the meet with Serena and how this all came about, and you guys organizing this. For this being a topic of discussion, and you seeing that we need to make a precedence here, and we need to stand up and do what's right. Culling healthy animals is just pure evil. And if anybody has any suggestions going forward and want to email us, I know that we really want to go about this at the angle too, to try to get the ostrich removed off the poultry list, because they're just classified as poultry. When we did our exemption, papers for exemption, all the questions were for a commercial poultry farmer. My mom said to CFIA, I can't answer these. They don't comply with anything we do. And they said, if you answer no to even one of those, your exemption is you have no chance at an exemption. So if anybody has any suggestions with their science and their scientific, you guys and all your smarts, how we can how we can show and prove that a chicken is completely different than an ostrich, please send all your feedback to us. That would be great.
Yeah, I think that you're going to get a lot of people reaching out to you. And is your emails on the website that Joe just shared there, right?
Yeah, yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would like to just point out, Katie, that there was something that you said in your early presentation when you were talking about the early evidence that was sent showing that the ostrich antibodies and eggs were actually much more robust than the poultry eggs. And so I just kind of want to go back to that because it seems like that was extremely important information. And I know that we have some great minds in here in this conversation. And so I love your talking about the exemptions and removing the ostrich from the poultry categorization. And I'm wondering, with the robust eggs, what that entails in the scientific world. Something else that Dr. Pelech said that was also extremely valuable at the beginning of this broadcast before we went live was that he talked about the scientific contribution that this farm has and how isolated and how extremely important this is to the scientific world to be able to study the antibodies, to be able to study if there's natural immunity in the older birds. And so just even the classification of protecting it for the scientific world using that verbiage, I think there's something extremely valuable there.
Thank you, Serena. I hope this, I think that there's a lot of people that'll be reaching out. And as we already know, you have wonderful people helping you in the background as well. So
we do.
We just, yeah, you are a test case, and I think that it's only going to ramp up. And I think they're going to go for different types of animals and animal farms more and more and more and more. So hopefully we can all gather together and fight for you to win yours so that we have a basis of how to continue fighting for this in the future for other people's farms. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you to the panelists. Really, really appreciate your input very, very much. And we wish you the best, Katie. We're obviously going to keep in touch and keep letting people know what's going on with your farm.
I appreciate it. Thank you, every one of you, and all of your contributions to what you do in the world, and thank you for what you're doing for us.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you for everyone.
Thanks again.
Adriana. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
And thank you to Westward Independent, Adriana and Joseph for hosting this. And thank you, Colin Big Bear Ross, for connecting each of us.
Perfect.